Hi.
Hi, welcome to Tonkocast.
Yes.
So, who was our guest this time?
Our guest this week was Rosie Sullivan, an incredible story artist. Yes.
She's definitely my favorite. Right? I've been telling you how much I love her work. She's this incredible storyteller. And her film, Kitbull, is definitely one of my favorite short films of the year. And then
it got shortlisted for the Oscars.
Yay.
So we're so happy for Rosie.
And then you had the great conversation with her. You got emotional?
I did get emotional. So Rosie is a mom of a lovely 2-year-old son. And she created Kitbull during and after the birth of her son. And I am expecting myself. And so Rosie and I just got into this really great, candid conversation of just being a mom in the animation industry.
So listen up.
Thank you. So welcome to, I don't even know the number of this Tonkocast.
Oh.
It's been, years in the making. I'm here with Rosie Sullivan.
Hello.
And to introduce Rosie to the listeners is, Rosie and I met at Pixar.
2011?
Yeah, like 2011. And so it's been a long time, years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, I don't even know if you know this. So Rosie and I have a lot of similarities before we got to Pixar.
Oh.
So you studied to be a vet at USF.
Yes.
I studied law at USF.
I didn't know that. Maybe I did and I forgot. But, whoa.
And then we both left and became filmmakers.
That's insane.
Which is nothing to say bad about USF. I think USF is a great school.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
What?
Especially for law and vet, yeah.
How did we not know that? What year were you?
I graduated law school 2008.
Oh, so just a year after me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. We could have seen each other on the street.
We probably
didn't
did.
know. Yeah. At Papalote Burritos.
Yeah, that's where it all began. The best.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That's
I think
awesome.
I ate burritos every day.
Mm-hmm.
So then we were both at Pixar around the same time. I started 2010. You started 2011. So we were there for, this really interesting time in Pixar's career. And then we worked on Good Dino. Rosie was in story and I was doing a lot of the voice.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of knew each other from afar.
Mm-hmm.
And then I left Pixar and Rosie has since gone on to work on Incredibles 2, Hyper, Coco. Most recently wrote and directed Kitbull through Spark Shorts. If anybody has not seen it, which I believe nobody in the world has not seen it, it has like 36 million views.
Oh, thanks for checking.
Yeah.
Last time I checked, it was just about to get there.
Oh my God, it's amazing. We were watching it last night and my husband was like, that's wrong. It can't be that.
Yeah.
And we checked it again. So it was, it's confirmed 36 million views, which is
insane.
36 million
It's unfathomable.
I know, it's
Yeah.
amazing. And that's not just the people who have seen it, because people watch it together.
Yeah.
So you can double that.
Oh my God.
a billion views.
Yay. The whole world.
I don't know if my math is right. But then also Rosie wrote a beautiful book, Mommy Science, and that came out in this spring, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, both around the same time. Both Kitbull and Mommy Science actually had around the same deadline too. So
my God.
It was an insane year.
Wow. Yeah, that's kind of how life goes, though.
Mm-hmm.
It's when it rains, it pours.
Oh, yeah.
More of a, I want to talk personal, obviously, but to just begin the interview let's talk Kitbull, because amazing. I can't play favorites to the Spark Shorts right now.
They're all amazing.
They're all amazing, but I love Kitbull.
Thank you.
And I actually remember before I left Pixar, you were showing me concept art that you were doing.
Yeah, on the Emery go-round.
Yes!
We were riding the bus together.
And you were like, yeah, I think I want to do this as a 2D short. And I was like, yes, oh my gosh. So it was amazing. I got to, see it in the very, very early stages, and then left and then saw it at its final.
form.
So it's incredible.
I still can't believe we finished it. Just when you're working on something for so long, it's like, wow, I can't believe it's done.
Yeah, and then it's such a big part of your life, I'm sure, during it, and then you have to put it down. And then So how long was the whole process from Emery go-round sketches to,
I'd say the majority of the process was in story by myself on me, with, at the time, my producer, who ended up being the same producer for Spark Shorts, Kat Hendrickson.
Yeah.
She was just sort of like helping me along with deadlines and kind of trying to reach some progression while it was still a co-op at the time. Like an independent side project at Pixar.
Yeah.
That all started in 2013, the very first sketch of the very first kitten.
Oh my God, 2013, and now here we are, 2019.
Yeah. Technically, actually, it might have even started before that because I painted that kitten on my then boyfriend, now husband's sister's wall in Berlin.
Really?
So she's like, you better credit me. This is her official credit.
Is it still there?
It is still there.
She needs to keep it up there. Yeah, she ever rents that apartment out.
Carve out the wall.
Exactly. I gotta ask, just because knowing that you studied to be a vet, was your like love and curiosity for animals, did that influence such a beautiful story about animals?
Definitely, yeah. And it definitely always started with like my love for just watching animals, seeing their behaviors, observing them, and being very entertained by them. Cat videos are the glue that holds the internet together, and so I have my full YouTube playlist of them during times of stress and struggling hard times on the project that I was on at the time. And so just creatively, I was feeling pretty stagnant. So I just wanted to do something for myself at the moment. And that was just draw this kitten doing funny cat things and see where it goes from there. That's usually how my ideas often started, with just like, let me play around with this character or this idea. So there wasn't even a story in the beginning.
So then it starts with like you drawing this adorable kitten cat. And I mean, like the animation, is, and you were one of the animators.
I did 2 shots, So I wasn't like, I wouldn't call myself a giant part of the animation force, but I definitely wanted to have at least a couple shots. One, because I was hugely inspired by Hayao Miyazaki's style of
we also love Miyazaki.
Oh, do you really?
Yes, at Tonko House we love Miyazaki.
But just this idea of like, even as an author, I wanted to have a little bit of a thumbprint in the final version of it. Because as a story artist, your work is never seen by the public. We're way ahead in the beginning, and your work helps support the final version of the movie, but it's never seen in the final version.
Animation is just incredible of the cat. It's both, there's like a cartoon element, but there's such realistic elements to it. What inspired you to take these like sketches and this like stress outlet into telling the story is personal? Yeah. And so what kind of led that, it's like stress outlet to like personal story. Like what is that connection?
So it's interesting because I didn't expect it to have these multiple layers. Like you said, it started as a stress outlet. Then it became like, okay, what is it? How do I connect with this kitten? Well, I was feeling frustrated with, at the time, not really finding a place of belonging yet on the project I was on, and my voice, I felt I was still struggling to find that too. And so I felt like this kitten, which was a stray, was also kind of struggling to find that sense of belonging and home and connection. And so I always wanted a dog, a Pitbull in particular, to be the counterpart to it. And because it was a Pitbull, that had all of the social and societal implications to that. It's a very charged breed. And the kitten was always going to be a black kitten, because that's also a very, historically charged animal as well. And so I wanted a story about 2 misfits, societal misfits, learning to connect with each other for the first time, because they both needed that. And over time, as I watched more reference videos to try to really get into the characters, get into how they would behave, I learned more and more about the plight of pit bulls and how they're treated, and how a lot of kind of their behavior, they're not a black and white animal. There is, a range of experiences around them, and so that hence the controversy. So as I was learning about them and developing the dog character, I thought, wow, this could be very metaphorical even for how we treat each other as humans too, and our biases and prejudices, and how we both confirm and also are wrong about them at the same time. There's no always easy answer around it. And so So as I was developing this story about these two animals and creatures, I wanted the kitten, which I always related to, that was to me always going to be the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to learn how to overcome its bias, how to overcome the walls that it set up around itself to feel safe in order to be there for the dog. And therefore for both of them to have a richer life once they both stepped past that.
Oh God, I got goosebumps like 5 times during that. I mean, it's so amazing. Like, I think my favorite part of the short is when the kitten scratches the pit bull.
Oh, really? That's your favorite part?
Yeah.
It's the hardest part, I find.
It is the hardest, but it's so, I mean, it's, you know, the audience clearly knows at that moment that he's trying to help kitten, and that it's just pure out of fear, and you just don't villainize either of the characters in that moment, which is, I think, just a very hard thing to do, to be able to make the audience feel empathy for both characters and then have no dialogue, and also it's these animals. It's just, it's an incredible, and just hearing you talk about it is amazing. But I have like all these lists of questions that I feel like we're not even going to get to, because I'm just
okay. I got nothing for the rest of the morning.
So it's like, how did you, I mean, it's so incredible that you're able to like bring the audience along with this empathy, and again, like more in like this like silent, no dialogue way. How do you do that? That's incredible.
I don't know. And if I were to start over again, I still don't know. I think for me, and it's interesting because when Kat and I actually started working on this, we actually approached Meg. She was still at Pixar. Amazing. Because we were like, how the heck are we going to make a 2D short?
Yeah.
So we're like, hey, Meg, you produced The Antipaper. Can you tell us how you guys made it? And it's funny that like it's come full circle that I'm back here at Tonko House for this interview, because she was telling me, and the thing that really was probably the best piece of advice that helped us plan and execute this short was like Dice and Robert just sit down with a list of goals. They're like, okay, we want to finish a film eventually, yes, and however long and however much it needs. But we wanted to finish in a film. We wanted to have that experience for the first time. We wanted it to be a good experience for people working on it. And there's probably, I'm of course paraphrasing. I'm sure there's way more that they had, but the fact that they just set a list of clear goals for themselves at the very beginning was, I feel like it helped me get on the right foot, and Kat as well. So the goal that I set for myself, because I had never made a short film before. Right. One was, okay, finish a film too. I got that goal. Check. Yeah. Steal.
Easier said than done.
Easier said than done. Yeah. But like that did mean like if it wasn't good, at least I hit the goal that I finished something. Yeah. 2, make myself and hopefully others care about the characters. So even if the film wasn't like perfectly consistent in execution, maybe there's one part of it that a little bit more animated, and other parts that maybe could be like glorified storyboards. At least if people could have been invested in the characters, then I will have succeeded in that. And then 3, not burn anybody out, hopefully. Make sure people also were invested, the people who were working on it were invested in it as well. So those are my main goals. So I think as I was going through making this short, and the story part was hard. People say story is hell, and I was so ready to be done with it. Yeah. Once it was editor's hand and production and layout's hands, I was like, thank God, someone else can deal with those problems, and I'll just decide on them. But once I was in it, my goal always, and with the crew and with the producing of it, was don't break the spell. We could always, of course, make this scene much more beautiful. We could animate that one out on more frames, like ones if you wanted to, but the goal of not breaking the spell, whatever it is, we don't bring the audience out of the story. That was what helped me decide, okay, maybe I can compromise a little bit on this section, and then make sure that section is where we put all our money in. That's the money shot. Yeah. And it helped me prioritize. Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. It's not as celebrated, but when directors can make decisions and like understand why they're making the decisions, it's what gets the project. It's to finish and
and also directing a team, whereas before I've just been working on my own on this story for so long, was essential in making this movie better than anything I could have done on my own, because I relied on my editor to give me that objective, like, you don't need this, let's cut it out. Yeah. No, I drew that and I loved it. Okay, I guess I don't need it. Wait, it's now only 8 minutes long as opposed to 18 minutes long. And then, every person on the crew had great ideas, and that also was what shaped and brought a lot more nuance and kind of freshness to the short, which just...
Oh my gosh, and you're in story for so long, and then you're like, oh wait, now I have to. Now it's a team effort now. It's not just a solo act. So I want to talk about, for our listeners, since this is audio, Rosie is a mother of a 2-year-old son. How old is Otto now? Exactly.
He is 28 months.
28 months.
2 years and 4
months.
months.
So almost 2.5.
Someone yesterday asked me, when do you stop counting their age in months? Never. You're still a baby to me.
Totally, yeah. I'm still in weeks, but yeah. And then I'm pregnant with a son. So, yay. So I'm about 6 months pregnant. You know, I was really excited that Rosie was coming on, obviously, for Kitbull, and, you know, you're head of story at Pixar right now, and you're doing all this incredible stuff, and an author and illustrator of a, you know, beautiful children's book. So for all those reasons, I was, of course, excited to have Rosie and talk about her art. But at the same time, I think that right now in our climate, you know, we're talking so much about women in animation, and these conversations are incredible, but we don't talk a lot about mothers in animation. And I think that that's, you know, a big part of being a woman is, even if you don't have kids, there's always the thought of, do I want this? And what does that mean to my career? And it's prevalent whether or not you end up having kids. And so I just wanted to dive in and talk about just being a mother in animation. You know, I've been surprised so much by pregnancy. There's like surprises every day.
I didn't know my body could grow like this much.
Yeah, or I didn't know my body could make that sound, you know? There's a lot of surprises in pregnancy. And one of them that I really was just amazed by was this like confidence that I've gotten in myself. You're doing some pretty incredible stuff when you're pregnant, and you're growing bones, and you're carrying a child, and it's incredible. And I didn't, until I became pregnant, I did not understand that. It's such this source of strength for me. Like, fuck yes. Like,
this is a superpower.
Yes.
Yeah.
I can't describe it as anything but like, holy shit, I am like growing a human, and
life is being formed right now.
And it's amazing to be a part of it. And it also has, I was telling Anna, our editor, before this, I was like, do other people know that this is what women do? Like, it's amazing. Like, do they know? Like, this is incredible. And it's truly this, like, you
kind of feel like this weird harmony with the universe. You're like, oh.
Yes, absolutely.
Biology.
Yes, it's very primal. And it's also something that, like you said, harmony with the universe, but also harmony with people around you. And it has made me connect more to people. And anybody it's really like brings you all to the same level. And then, but also it's this huge source of strength for me. Like when I'm doing something either tough, or if I'm doing something that's like I succeed at, I kind of have this moment where I'm like, by the way, I'm also growing a human. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So, you know, and
ain't no small feet, except for inside your belly.
Oh yeah, but they don't feel small right now, because that's what's kicking. But so I just wanted to just celebrate that, like take this moment and celebrate it. I think paternity leave and all of that is really at its infancy to like, it's just starting to like not even be considered an inconvenience. And I don't even think it's that far along. It's still this like, you know, you still have to take time off work, and it's this, you know, burden, I think, or it's viewed as that. And at the same time, I'm just going through it now. I'm like, no, this is a source of strength. Yeah. This is like, I am so much better now than I was 4 months ago. Yeah. So I wanted to say that and just talk about how motherhood, because you had Otto during...
before the Spark Short was made, but during this process of being developed, and same with the book as well. Being developed.
But still, even raising, you know, a young son. Yeah. And just how motherhood has influenced you as an artist in this whole process. And Yeah, so I don't have a specific question. Just
no,
like,
let's talk.
Yeah.
An entire umbrella of questions.
Yeah.
How does motherhood affect the filmmaking process, the artistic process, the process of just working in a collaborative environment, no matter what role you are in. And I'm very fortunate right now, actually, to be working with a lot of parents, mothers and fathers, and people who are like both fathers or both mothers of like the same sex couple. And it's a very humbling, but also connecting experience too. And that's not to say that people who don't have children or can't have children can't also connect into that feeling. But for me personally, at least, it was something where it just unlocked a different part of my brain that I didn't know I had, which was just a different perspective that I didn't realize I had until I was forced to consider this little tiny potato that was so dependent on me, and I was so dependent on him too, honestly, like just emotionally and everything. So the very meta level, it's like the most humbling experience I have had so far, and being that close to just seeing life and growth and awareness and curiosity and seeing a little person, a little human, little baby become like develop more into a person, and seeing that personality come out is just like, I feel like a little nature documentary, just watching the primordial soup of life and seeing it evolve. It's like intensely fascinating. But it's also like part of the humbling is also the hard work and the struggle, and that came out of it too, like the sacrifice. Life is different, but it's not completely different. Like, we still got to go out. Every now and then I still had a hangover the next morning. Mama had to treat herself sometimes and go out with some friends. But
I didn't get to drink for 9 months. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So I made it work still because that was one of my priorities too, was just like to still balance me and keep that part of myself before my son came into the world that I knew would be important to my creative evolution, or creative independence, I should say. So yeah, it was harder because you just don't have as much time anymore. Especially in the very early days. I called it baby jail. I'm like, you're hungry again? What? But because of that, because you don't have as much time, and funny enough, it was during the making of Kitbull and during the making of this book that it really forced me to change how I work. I had to be way more efficient by 1,000%, and that really, I think that was also essential in directing a short film. I had to live with my decisions because I just didn't have time to hem and haw, and I think that was really good.
I totally hear that your days are just shorter. There's less hours in the day.
And less energy too, that you have.
Exactly. So the quantity of time, but at the same time, that doesn't necessarily equal less work getting done.
Right. Yeah. In fact, it was probably more work than if I were to really look at the efficiency and productivity of pre-auto versus post-auto.
Yeah.
Technically, objectively, I was more productive after.
Yes.
Because
no qualifiers.
Like,
yes, you have done an amazing amount of work in the last 2 years.
Yeah, with a ton of help. I will acknowledge that.
Of course.
And that's the other thing is my mentality was, I could do it all on my own. And maybe before the Spark story happened, I did have the mentality. I was like, well, if I can't find any animators, I'll just animate the whole thing on my own. But I had to rely on people because I was more limited, and that did make me a better director. Because it forced me to have to communicate and articulate what I needed. Was much less apt to do that in the past. Yes,
that's yes. I dropped a notebook yesterday, and I was like, that thing is staying down there. Unless I ask for someone to pick it up, that thing's just gonna stay down.
Otherwise, you need the squat waddle.
Yeah, it's
right, got it.
Otherwise it's 5 minutes of my day to get a notebook. So definitely the asking for help is real and constant. Again, just is such a positive consequence of going through something like this, where there's no you can't say, oh, there's an alternative. There's just no alternative.
There's no
that
alternative.
notebook is staying on the floor.
Yeah.
And I can
Until
read
someone
it.
gets
I
it.
can read
Yeah.
it from here. Yeah, and then, God, that's lovely.
But the big part of the struggle too, and was going back to work. Like, it's funny, during my maternity leave, there is a moment where I'm like, this is really hard, and I'm really lonely, and I miss not talking, like baby talking 24/7. And I love my son so much, but there was a part of me that I missed too. That freedom, that flexibility, that spontaneity that I just didn't have as much anymore. But once I started going back to work and I had a little bit more of that flexibility, or at least me time, I extremely, extremely missed my son. And so there was always this push and pull that I felt. And I think if I were in a less fulfilling job or doing something less fulfilling, it would be even more of a struggle. Or no, I guess it was more of a struggle because I felt like strong in both ways.
I get that. My big thing, looking ahead, is the animation industry and the film industry, and just being in a creative industry it's not a 9-to-5 job. You're not, you don't clock out at 5, and first off, nobody's clocking out at 5.
Yeah.
But you don't clock out, and then you can kind of turn that part of your brain off. And so, the big question that I'm asking myself is how much time do I need to be able to dedicate myself to this job in a way that or be able to get that balance. And I think that's, for me, it's like an unknown right now. I'm not in it. But how did you, and I don't want to say how did you strike that balance, because it's not ever perfect. It's always organic. How did motherhood and creativity and just being an artist, how did they intertwine for you?
Yeah, it was not delicate dance, but I mean, on one hand, I feel like I was in a very lucky position to be in a position where I could determine my schedule to some degree. Being in a director role, the whole production depends on your schedule to some degree. So I was able to carve out that time, ask for that time that I needed to pump, to leave when I needed to pick up.
Right, if you have to go pump, review is on pause.
Yeah, exactly. So reviews were around the pumping. But that mean you have to run back and forth a lot more to the bathroom to clean everything. But
yes.
But I was able to carve out that time that I needed and keep it disciplined for the show, but also for myself. But I can't say it was the same for all mothers. I know there were those who before me had children and did have a harder time on the shows because maybe they didn't have as much support. They weren't working with people who would have understood, for instance, because those people might not have been parents. So I was, and not to say that people who aren't parents can't be supportive and understanding. It's just that it sometimes is really about the people that you're working with and how understanding and flexible they are. But it was also I had to really, in myself, understand what I wanted and what I needed. And there could have been a potential of me being like, okay, you know what, I'm going to put more effort and energy into this job, and my son can be in daycare a little bit longer, or my husband can do more of the pickups, and he did a lot for me, so he was a huge base of support.
Which is amazing to have that as
exactly.
To enable.
The whole time I was like, how do single parents do this? I don't know how. Also, it was I also could have been like, maybe I don't need to pump. Maybe I just skip that so I can go to a meeting, and then my body would be like, pump now.
Exactly.
So it was being disciplined up front about what I needed. And being able to say, okay, this is enough.
I mean, that's incredible. It is,
people.
It is. We had Meg came in as almost 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, and she was the first mother in a leadership role at Tonko House, and she was very I have to leave at 5 p.m. every day to pick up Maeve, and every day at 5 p.m. she was true to her word, and she was leaving, and it was this incredible moment in Tonko House where it was like, and we would be having a meeting and she's like, all right, 5 p.m. And it was just this incredible way of like showing us how non-negotiable it was, but how everybody rallied behind it and was like, we became more efficient during that time period.
Yeah.
And I don't think that there is a single negative aspect of that where it's like, no, Tonko House just became more organized and we were forced to like, we can't go until 8 p.m. or we didn't have these nebulous hours because it's just, it is what it is. And it's the structure of it, I think which is such a gift. Yeah.
Which is interesting that like, I don't know if that was ever thought about in the industry before. Maybe there just weren't enough mothers in leadership for a long time. But once there were, like Meg and other people who like had these strong limitations, and not just mothers, fathers who also probably had to take care of young children.
Exactly.
Had to leave early. There was never a question for a long time of like, could there be a better way? Could we work within strict limitations? And once that started to be proven, now people are like, wait, why don't we just do that?
Right. And it's opened up, in Meg doing that, it's opened up a better work-life balance for everybody. Like for fathers and for mothers and for non-parents. And it's again, just this, I just see it as such this positive consequence that unfortunately just can't be quantified.
Yeah.
So you talked about like working within limitations and trusting your gut. And that's something that Eric talked about during Dam Keeper Poems, because we had a very, very short production schedule. And he was like, there was no option B. Like I had to go through option A. Like, can you talk about just that whole process? Like, all right, this is my instinct and this is what we're going with.
Yeah. I feel like it's funny, a lot of people are like, oh, how did you have that story so ready in the beginning? It's like, well, it's because I was developing it for a long time. And I knew myself, my working process, which is I need to ruminate on something and I need to go through all the avenues and options. And I felt lucky enough to have had that chance because Kitbull was developed for so long on my own that by the time they said, okay, we're pressing start, go, make this by the end of 6 months.
6 months was your production timeline?
Yeah.
For 8 minutes?
Yeah. But like I said, I went through every option in the world for the story. So by the time we started, I had to cut like an edited version of the short that my editor fortunately was able to do in a short amount of time. So yeah, I felt prepared when I started. So that for me was the key to my success, I think, on this show. And so yeah, I feel like if you are in a position to have to check your gut, I feel whatever you can do to prepare yourself, to get yourself to a like more or less solid foundation, that is knowing what you want, then it is about, okay, my gut is just gonna help me with this compass, but as long as you have a compass in the very beginning, I think that's how you can more securely trust your gut.
So you talked about these goals that you guys outlined in the beginning. Was that like your compass? Was it because some of the goals of not losing the spell? That's not like this specific, like,
right. It's not like a concrete.
Right. So how did that look throughout the process?
Well, it's interesting, even starting back in story, even with our first cut, it wasn't the final version of the film. There was still like 3 minutes too long in the boards, and we were trying to cut it down to a 6-minute reel. And the third act was very different. They were escaping out of a garage, for instance. And at some point I was screening the reels to peers and people like my own personal brain trust. And at some point, Kristen Lester, who directed Pearl, she always had very, very like gets right to the point judgment. And she asked me, Rosie, like, there's a lot of great stuff in here, a lot of great ingredients, but I'm not getting what it is that's so resonant for you, like why you're telling this story. And I had a hard think of that. I really reflected and thought, okay, well, this story, is like, the reason why I'm telling this is because I, as a kid, had trouble connecting to others. I was very sensitive, very shy, very easily hurt. Emotion, like just by every little thing was very hard to cope with. And eventually the loneliness got too much. So I had to force myself to be vulnerable and reach out and kind of go step beyond my wall to make a connection with other people. And when I came to that realization was, even though it was already always there in the DNA of the story, I wasn't able to articulate until after Kristen asked me that question. And once I had that, it's like, oh, in order to make a connection, like a real connection, you have to take the risk to be vulnerable. That's when I was able to articulate that premise, that was able to be the compass for everything else down the road. That was able to be the compass of like, okay, are we getting that theme out in this moment of the story or in this acting here?
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
You did. Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Achieved the compass.
And that also then helped me shave off 3 minutes of complexity and time, because what was originally going to be this epic escape action sequence where the kitten goes and saves the dog and they escape out of the garage and the cops come and people are fighting each other. I realized it wasn't about the kitten learning to be brave and externally save a dog. It was about the kitten learning to be vulnerable. And that's where it became the third act, climax of the short became the kitten going into the dog's crate for the first time.
Yes.
So
God, I just want to keep watching it. Every time you're talking about it, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to watch it.
And so it was a quieter climax that I didn't reach until that question. So there had to be some room for epiphany, I guess.
Right. And so where in the process was that moment?
That epiphany?
Like,
pretty early on, I'd say probably within the first couple of months.
Great.
Which was very convenient because I'm like, I have to make this thing.
Right. And also doing a 2D production is the changes down the pipe in a 2D production are hard. Yeah.
The cement dries much faster.
Yes. Perfectly put. Yes. Yeah. So as you know, Chris and I are working on our 2D production. It's like everything that you and Kat and your team set up is just, I know you're on the other side of it, but I'm just looking at it with just such admiration. Like, oh my gosh, how do we do it? But I know when you were probably in it, it didn't feel so together.
I hope this comes together. I hope people like it. I hope the crew likes it because I have no idea. It's going to be good.
No, it's amazing. Let's talk about your book. So I have not gotten to read the book, but I read the synopsis yesterday.
Yeah.
And halfway through the synopsis, I started crying.
Oh no, Courtney, I'm sorry.
It's so beautiful. It's so beautiful. And then I was like, oh God, pull it together. No. So then I would go back to the beginning of the synopsis, and I was like, I have to toughen up for Rosie.
No. This is part of the. I will say, I think this is part of the pregnancy too, and even post pregnancy. I couldn't sing certain songs without bawling.
It's amazing. To tap into that emotion right now.
It's like being high. It's a great feeling. I love it.
I know. And then eating croissants is also a feeling like that.
I ate an entire baguette once, so it's okay.
But yeah, so the book is about a mother and a daughter relationship, and just in the spirit of talking about, motherhood with artistry can you just kind of fill us in on the inspiration of the book and also just your process of, I don't know, I'm like amazed that you did this and then Kitbull at the same time. And it's,
I don't think I could do that again. Let me just say that. That was
say that, but
at least one project at a time would be nice.
But yeah, I mean, can you talk about just the premise of the story and the inspiration of it?
Yeah, so this is like very, very personal story. I mean, Kitbull came to a personal place and started from like a personal motivation, but this is the more literally personal, or at least kind of overtly personal story. Even though it's set in Malaysia, and I never lived there, I did go back and visit. I have family. My mom is from Malaysia, and it's our family is Muslim, so hence the mother character in this has a hijab on. And wears traditional clothing from Malaysia. the book, the story in general was based on my mother's and my relationship when I was around this age of the main girl character, whose name is Aaliyah, and she's around 9 years old in the story. And just for full disclosure, when I was around that age, my mother was diagnosed with a mental illness, a permanent chronic mental illness, and it was really hard for me to grapple with that as a child, and for my whole family, and for my mom especially. And so I've always had this story in me of wanting to, in some form or another, whether a graphic novel, feature, short film. But then I applied. I figured, Pixar Artist Showcase. This was a program at Pixar that, kind of like the Spark Shorts program, was trying to find diverse voices and people who normally didn't have the outlet to create their feature. It was an outlet for people to pitch an idea for a short children's book. And so I applied with something close to this, and they accepted it based on an outline, like a pitch packet. And so as I was making this, I realized, okay, I need to tell this story story of my mother and me. And I wanted it to be a story of hope, but also tapping into that confusion and that sense of loss and grief of what was a former version of our relationship, and then finding strength as a child with how to cope with the change in that relationship. And so the story ultimately became about a little girl who is super close to her mother, attached to the hip, but then one day her mother is sick. You don't know why in the story, you just know she's sick and she can't be with her daughter. And the daughter is really sad, and she kind of withdraws, and her aunties try to get her to come out and go walking, but the girl just wants to kind of stay in one place and grieve that time that she was with her mom can't happen right now. But then she kind of realizes, she remembers something that she and her mom shared. They have a little dream. In her dreams, she and her mom are tumbling around in flower fields, and they sit under a giant hibiscus flower, and that's her mother's favorite flower, Susie waters them. And then she gets an idea that, if I go up to my mom and I give her a little hibiscus flower and tell her, no matter what, I'll always love you and I'll be here by your side, then that's all she kind of needed to do. And then mother, little by little, gets better at the end.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that was the moment.
I know, Courtney, I'm sorry. I had to go there with you. Let's go on this journey together.
It's no shame. Well, thank you for, telling the story on this Tonkocast, but also in this book. I think also just more stories of mental illness, I think, are very valid and important to tell. And I want to ask, how has being a mommy yourself, how did that influence this story? Because it's such an adventure to take, such a huge moment or feeling and distill it down into a story that actually works.
Yeah, maybe even.
Exactly. Hopefully it works. But is there something that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but was there like a clarity? And did you write this when you were, when you had Otto, after Otto?
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
What was it like writing, you're a new mother, but you're writing a story about being a child to a mother? What was that experience?
It was very interesting. I'd say because it was happening during Kitbull, it was also like how do I even write this, and how do I have the time to write this? Oh my gosh. I'd say it was hard for sure. But it's interesting because I think I was focusing a lot on like my own experience and the memories and kind of pain, but also hope and all the feelings basically that I went through thinking back to my experience with this. And therefore Otto wasn't playing a huge role on that. It was almost more like my own kind of self-therapy or finding closure with that experience. But eventually, as struggling with balancing everything, I also came to realize and have even more empathy, a deeper sense of empathy for what my mom went through, and what all that she struggled with. Like one, just struggling with your health, but she was an immigrant, and all of her family was in Malaysia. And so there must have been, and she came to the US. She had never left Malaysia until she married my dad and came to the US and had my brother and me, an older brother of mine. And so the insecurity she must have felt, the completely fish out of water feeling, and she's like such a bubbly person. Like you look at her, it's like, oh, she'd never have any problem fitting in anywhere. But still, there's like a sense of loneliness you must have felt when you're being so far away from your family and struggling to find how you fit in a new culture. And so going through my maternity leave and learning how to care for a child and being a parent for the first time, I really appreciated how hard it must have been for her to raise us. And so I had a deeper appreciation for my mom when making this book. And I was hoping that maybe this could be like a thank you to her.
Oh.
Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, Courtney. I got you again.
No, it's fine. Well, it's a very, very beautiful thank you. Yeah, and you're lucky to have the talent and the skills to tell it too. Well, thank you. I want to end on that beautiful note because I'm halfway to tears right now.
No.
That's okay.
Sorry.
It's okay.
It's good.
It's great.
It feels good to cry. I like it.
But yeah, I wanted to just ask, is there anything like you wish I asked? Like, what do you want to end this? How to conclude this Tonkocast? I know it's a hard question. I keep giving you these like open-ended questions.
No, I mean, I'm very grateful that you reached out and are taking this time because I know you guys are very busy. So, and you got a lot going on. So I really appreciate, your curiosity and connecting about this. And I also just the theme of it is not talked about enough. And I feel like the industry really does need to change if they want more diverse voices, more women in film and leadership, and more female stories. We need to accommodate a more flexible and female-friendly or parent-friendly livelihood. And I do think the industry and the films will get better as a result of that. The industry just needs to take that leap of faith to do it and not always think of the bottom line. But as far as just like storytelling, what I've learned from all of this, and also being a parent, I feel like the more we can come back to like why is it that we're telling these stories, and what is it from our personal experience and our life experiences drive each idea that we develop, each story that we develop. I think that's the more we can be honest with that, and the more we can connect with audiences. And other mothers and fathers and babies.
Thank you so much, Rosie, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Tonko House.
All right.
Cool.
We'll talk to you later, or I don't know how to sign off on this.
Bye-bye.
Bye.